All right, it's 9:35.
Good.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead. We're a little early on this, but since we're kind of at a little bit of a break in the flow, those of you who may not be aware, our board bylaws require us to have them, if we're going to go past 10 p.m. on any of our meetings, we have to make a motion. We can only extend the time one time. I'm taking a look at the agenda with the public comment that we have and about an hour and a half of remaining items, some of which have to be voted on tonight. I'm going to move that we extend the meeting to no later than midnight.
I'll second it.
Second.
All right. Trustee Maher,
Yay.
Miller,
Aye.
Makashi,
Aye.
Marion,
Okay.
and I as well. Honestly, this is the worst, longest meeting of the year typically. So I promise the rest of them, I hope to be able to promise the rest of them won't be this long. All right. So were there specific questions that you wanted to ask now, or is it the board's pleasure to go straight to public comment?
I have some questions.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, one, I take it this is for Dave or someone else, I guess. Is the survey, are we going to survey the parents of high school and teachers? Is that the choice commitment? Is that was on your plan?
So I'll let Dr. Woodward speak to that.
Okay.
I can take that, Trustee Maher. So yes, quite some time ago, we re-surveyed our elementary families because we realized the longer the pandemic continued that many families may have changed their minds. And so we want to be able to time those surveys so that it's as close in our ideal world as we can plan on opening to when students would actually come back, because it minimizes the possibility of changing minds. So given that has already occurred for elementary, and we're in the planning process of crafting that next survey that would go to our secondary families in January, so that they can share their updated preferences with us. We know that families selected preferences in the summer, but as time has gone on, many have indeed changed their minds about whether or not they'd like to stay home or have their students return to school.
Okay. Another question I have, and anyone can answer this, is I think everyone, at least a lot of the comments I'm getting, they understand that we're in the purple tier and we have to be 2 consecutive weeks in red before we open. Do we have a target amount of time when we will look to reopen our elementary once we get in red? And then once we're in red, what will be kind of the target number of days before we open in secondary? Because that's really what the parents, I'm getting a lot of feedback on, is that they know that we're in this situation, but when? They say planning, but you've demonstrated a lot of the plan. They want to know kind of when is the light at the end of the tunnel as such? Not so much the date, but like when after we get into those situations.
So Trustee Maher, you'll recall that when I brought the reopening plan to the board originally, that my proposal was to open in stages, beginning with the youngest learners first. This does give us an opportunity to rethink how we approach things and do it in a sliding scale as we move forward, as opposed to just trying to bring everybody back in a rush at one time. And so I can see how we may want to start first with our TK through 2 students, as we recommended before, grow into 3 through 5, then bring back grades 6 and 9 first at the middle and the high schools, to give those kids the opportunity to kind of get to know a school that they've never been on the campus of, and then bring in the upper grades after they've had that opportunity to do that. I don't think that needs to take a long time. I just think that it gives students and teachers in the school sites the opportunity to really implement these plans in a staged way, so that they can control and modify as they move forward.
Yeah, I don't think that I understand. I think that's fantastic. I think what the question was, once we move into a stage, what is kind of like, what are you thinking about the timeline before we try to move in, or what are you looking for before we move into the next stage?
Well, I would say, and I'll let Dr. Woodward, speak to this as well, that once we hit that red tier after we come out of shelter in place and we've sat in that tier for 2 weeks, I think that we would expect to see the first round of openings occur at that time.
Okay.
And then we can collaborate together and with parents and with the sites to make sure that we're following a pattern that makes sense to everybody and that people can agree on. I mean, the positive thing is that we've got vaccines on the horizon. Now they're not going to be to everybody, right away, but they will be to some, including hopefully our teachers and our staff that are working at the school sites with the students. And in so having that ability to vaccinate individuals, it gives us a higher level of confidence in the ability to mitigate the risks associated with the virus. But that obviously assumes that parents and staff are going to be willing to take the vaccine. And so there's just, when I said it was complicated, I didn't mean that it was hard. I meant that it was complicated. There are so many different people with so many different abilities to make choices, and we have to work with all those choices. But I think the best answer I can give you, Steve, is that 2 weeks after we've been in the red tier, I think we can start to move forward with reopening. My advice before, and it will be again when we come back, will be to do it in a staged way that allows staff and parents and students to come onto campus in a way that they can be confident in.
Okay. Another question is cohorts, and it looks like we have 300 in the cohort program right now. Are we looking to try to expand that, and can teachers volunteer to go to the cohort to do, let's say, because I've had some teachers ask me, Steve, I want to go back to class just for a small group. Maybe it's a lab, maybe it's a reading group of my struggling readers. Are we going to be able to do that? Do I have to?
Like me to take a stab?
Okay.
You're on mute, Dr. Hagen. I think you said yes.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I won't.
Okay, thanks for being patient. And I only say that because I want to make a point, and then I'll turn it over to you and to Ed and to Janelle to, to provide some color to whatever it is that I have to say here. Let's just be really, really clear that there are teachers in classrooms on our campuses every day now, some of whom have kids coming in. So that is already taking place. And we'd love to see that opportunity expanded because I think it's in the best interest of kids, and we have teachers that want to do it.
I would agree.
I'm hopeful that we will have an increasing number of people that are willing to come in with a small cohort that meets the small cohort guidelines, so group size and 3 weeks at a time, and really allow teachers to start meeting some of the, not just the academic needs, but as Megan said in her comments, the social emotional needs of some of the students. I think there's great opportunity, and we have some really wonderful folks that would like to take advantage of that opportunity. And I want to see us be able to do that. So Julio can talk about the technical side of it, and then Ed can talk about the kind of the shape and the program.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund. So we are not actively recruiting, as that would not be in conformity with the Janus case, and direct dealing with represented members of a labor group. But when a staff member does indicate to our administrators that they're willing to volunteer, we are providing them all the assistance under the guidance of the cohort provided by the county. Also, the PPE and the safety precautions that are provided with our current MOU. We currently also have language with APT at the negotiating table, which again, we are waiting for either some movement with that language at the negotiating table. But as Dr. Haglund stated, there are a number of EPT members that are supporting our students volunteering to do so in our small cohorts. And again, we are not actively asking nor engaging, because that would be in violation of case law. But we are being supportive as best as we can. We would appreciate APT to take a more active role in our language that we have, and taking it out of the background and putting it to the forefront. That said, we do appreciate those APT members who are currently actively engaged in supporting our students.
Because we have band and we have coaches, I know, and that are, well, they were, I guess after the January, they'll start again. But I guess I would hope that our association and yourself, and I'm not in the negotiations or anything like that, but somehow try to give the message that if you want to volunteer, you can. And don't feel pressure to or not to, but just, because I've had teachers ask me, Steve, I want to go in. And I said, well, I'm not in with that. I know that you probably can because we have coaches and that doing it, but because we have many, many students that need that direct contact. If not, even if it's 6 feet, they need to hear from their teacher, looking at their teacher. And I'm hoping that we could somehow get to the point where those who want to come in will come in.
Trustee Maher, hopefully I can answer your first part of that question. So the shape of the cohorts are, there's a limitation into the number of individuals that can be in a cohort, and that's 16. And so that could be any combination of students and staff. So in our special day classes, it's been 12 students, 4 staff. Some of our students need extra support. In our general education cohorts, it could be that 14 students, 2 staff, or 15 students, 1 staff. So that's really been our goal from the start, is to open as many cohorts as we can, given our resources. I'm talking about our staff, and then also making sure that we follow all the health and safety precautions. But to answer that question, yes, I talked to our high school principals, and at least at the high schools, we're looking to expand our cohort participation, or the number of cohorts that we have currently come January.
Have we had many outbreaks of COVID with the cohorts that we have now?
I don't know how to quantify how, a lot, but Steve, in the cohorts, there have not been that many in our cohort. If any, I would have to double check. There are students on our campuses that have, had COVID, tested positive for COVID, but for staff, I can't find the number in my memory right now, Steve, but it's not that many, if any. I don't know if my colleagues have the answer to that, but I don't believe so.
Okay, and then I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't believe we've had any positive COVID within our staff supporting the cohorts.
Okay.
We did have an unfortunate incident that was reported in the news that did not trickle down into our cohorts, possibly siblings, but no positivity there. We had some positive cases that involved other staff not directly involved with our cohorts.
Okay.
And I can definitely double check on that, Trustee Mark. I believe that's the data that we currently have with our interactive process.
I have 2 other quick questions, and then I'll.
Can we give the rest of the folks a chance to ask some questions? Can you hold your question for just a little bit, and then we'll move on, and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Does that work? Kelly, how about you?
Well, I'd like to get a little more clarity on the rationale for if consideration for staggering opening of schools. The rationale for the 6th and 9th grades first, just to kind of re-clarify that, the rationale to support those grades next after the K2 and the 3-5.
Sure, I'm happy to do that, Trustee Makashi. So as Dr. Haglund mentioned, our 6th grade students have not physically been on their campuses other than to potentially drive by and pick up books, and neither have our 9th grade students. So it is something we'd like to do to be able to bring them back so they can become familiar with the campus layout. They can understand how the campus works, have some time for connections with their peers, and build some of those relationships, and then transition the remainder of the students back following that. So it's a means to intervene. We know that typically our 6th grade students and our 9th grade students tend to struggle most with the transition into either the middle school or the high school. I've seen this myself as a middle school principal, and as a high school principal. And although the remote learning environment has been as robust as we can possibly make it right now, when we're learning through computers, the in-person structure is very different from what they have experienced before. Even the transition from middle school to now a vast high school campus can be very overwhelming. And so we wanted to be able to support those students in a more intentional manner when they first come back, prior to bringing the rest of the students back on campus.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Woodward. So to follow up on that, then would after that, envisioning 7th, 8th, and 10th through 12th grade, or stagger it more? Just to get an understanding of the thought process on that.
So there's many ways that we could go with that. It is possible, I believe, that we could bring 7th and 8th grade back at the same time, and also then look at bringing our 10th, 11th, and 12th grade back at that time too. There can be solid rationale for bringing 10th grade students back first or after the 9th grade, or there could be an argument for bringing our 12th grade students back who have a limited amount of time to be on the campus before they graduate. So I think it's a discussion that we need to continue to have. Also, as you know, we are looking carefully at the achievement of our students. And so with that in mind, we would like to continue to look at how well our students are doing, and that may inform who comes back first at the secondary level.
Sure. So because we don't know timing for when we would be going from shelter in place to the purple tier, one thing that really is intriguing me is the small cohort program. Is there an opportunity to or consideration for engaging other students that might be slipping through the cracks? There's been a lot of communication from families with their children that maybe they aren't identified at risk, but they're falling through the cracks through, other struggles. Is there any option for consideration and or parent request for those additional students? So to re-clarify my question is, right now it looks like targeted students are part of the cohort program, correct?
Yes.
So is there opportunities for additional students to be considered, whether it be lack of motivation or other issues, and are parents able to, put in a request for consideration to attend those small cohort programs?
So I can start this, and then I may pass to Mr. Dialazzo or Mr. Hernandez for additional clarification. We would like to be able to could fulfill this by parent requests and also by looking. I know that our sites are looking by name and by need to see which students would benefit the most. We talked a little bit about if teachers were interested in volunteering to come in. That is one way it could come about, but as Mr. Hernandez mentioned, we're not actively recruiting them to do that. We have been, and Mr. Hernandez, you might want to elaborate on this, we have been running postings so that we can recruit additional staff to support the cohorts. The number of cohorts is dependent upon the number of people that we have that are qualified and are able to supervise our students. And so given that, we could expand tremendously if we had a robust pool of people who are willing to do that for us. We greatly appreciate those who have stepped up and are doing it now. It's making a world of difference for our students. I have no doubt that at every single site, our principals have a running list of students that they would want to put in first, and they're already looking at how can they expand that. I believe we may have just had another cohort start at one of our high schools this past week. So definitely, and we would love to do that. Mr. Hernandez, I'll pass to you in case you have anything else to add.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. The challenge is staffing and compelling staff. The gray area is the guidance that is given to us, given that we are allowed to open cohorts but not reopen, meaning instruction, teaching, because currently there are supervision cohorts that is education taking place vis-a-vis the paras and others are supporting that instruction, but not giving technically instruction directly because they're not, again, teachers. You do not have credentials. The instruction is coming vis-a-vis the laptops. So it does become an issue of compelling. And if we could compel that, giving the governor's direction and guidance as to reopening, this is why it's essential, I believe, that we get cooperation from our APT partners in supporting the volunteer process until we're able to, if need be, compel our staff to come and support the cohorts. And again,
Thank
there's
you.
an area there.
Thank you. I just have one other question. I know we've received some communication from many parents getting clarification on, the best way I can describe it would be more clarification on a bell schedule or what it's going to really look like for the hybrid model once we go back, once we're in the red tier. Did I read somewhere in the information that was provided to us that that would be planned to be presented out 2 weeks prior to resuming back to school? I thought I saw that somewhere, but wasn't really sure. Does that time frame seem like that makes sense from some of the literature I received in the packet?
I think it's reasonable that we'd want to notify our families as much in advance as we could in terms of the bell schedule. That is very doable at the elementary level. In fact, that's pretty clear right now and already established. At the secondary level, one of the things we have to determine is how will those passing periods look and what will happen during those passing periods. So
Sure.
some of that needs to be solidified. But what I can say is that the schedules that were shared today at our board meeting, those schedules will remain intact in terms of the periods that the students have in a given day and approximately that amount of time. There might be some variance in the passing period time, but generally speaking, that would be the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Carrion.
I just have comments, so I'll wait.
Okay. Trustee Miller.
Yeah, same for me. No questions.
I just have really one question. In the sense that folks in education have been deemed essential workers, but we're not in the first tier of, those vaccines are going to healthcare workers and nursing home attendees and workers. When is the likelihood that vaccines will be available for education essential workers? Do we have any idea?
So I don't think we had yet. If he has more information than I do, he can jump in there, but I don't think he probably does yet because the vaccines are so new. So the first one is going out. So in Alameda County, they have 2 phases, but in phase 1, there's phase 1A and phase 1B. And so the essential workers at the school system are in phase 2. And so once the county gets through phase 1A and phase 1B, then it moves to phase 2, and the dates would be driven on how quickly additional vaccines are approved. I hope that makes sense. So if the second vaccine comes online, then their ability to vaccinate more people comes with the additional vaccine.
So we don't know yet.
That's the simple answer. I was just trying to be helpful.
You are being helpful. I just want to make it clear to the public that we don't have a firm date
for that,
about
right.
when that would be.
Trustee Larson, I was on a call last week with the state health officer, Dr. Pan, and it was on a call with California Collaborative on Educational Excellence, California Health and Human Services Agency, California Department of Public Health, and then Cal OSHA. And Dr. Pan did mention this, and it's exactly what Dr. Haglund just said from memory. There's a phase or tier 1A, which is our healthcare providers, first responders, and then tier 1B, and then the K-12 teachers will be in phase 2. So that's exactly right. And so she talked a little bit about the counties receiving the Pfizer vaccine, which was the one that was recently approved, 13,000 coming to Alameda County. And the way it's described from the Alameda County leaders is city critical workers, county healthcare providers, and then some of the private medical providers. Those would be the first folks that would receive the vaccines. So if there's more vaccines that come our way, then we can move into that phase 2. So that's my understanding of the last call that I was in.
Thank you. Steve, did you want me to circle back to you? Have questions at this point?
You know, I'll wait after the community because I'm sure they like that. It's late for them too.
Thank you. I appreciate your cooperation. All right, Mr. Gannon, let's open it up for public comment. Speakers will have 2 minutes. I'd like to ask if someone's already said what you wanted to say, you can just pass or say, I agree. If you've already emailed the board members all of your comments, you don't actually, I mean, you're welcome to, but you don't need to say it again to us. We read your emails. In the interest of time, it doesn't make a difference to us whether you email it to us or you speak it to us at a meeting. So I just want you to know that we do read all of those, as has been referenced by several people tonight. All right, Mr. Gannon.
Thank you, Trustee Larson, and thanks for the folks that have stuck around with us. I'd like to, I know that we have one student who wants to make a public comment. So at the Grace's suggestion of someone, I would like to start with her. So Elise Hockaday, we will start with you. All right.
Okay.
Bear with us
Can you
just
hear
1
me?
minute. Elise, are you there?
Hi, sorry, yeah. It wasn't working for a minute.
All right, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. So hi, my name is Elise Hockaday, and I'm a sophomore at Amador Valley High School. And I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to the teachers and the PUSD, because thank you so much for all of your hard work and during this difficult time. And I completely understand all the challenges that we have been experiencing. So a lot of my concerns have kind of been addressed, but I kind of just wanted to give a brief summary. I think that I understand that younger students need to go before older students because they have more need. But I guess my main question would be, is there a way for us to know if we would be able to maybe set a time, or if we would know if we could go back to school before the school year, I guess. I just think that the motivation of students has been a little bit on the down low. I'd say that I'm usually a pretty good student. However, during this time, it's been a little bit hard to get as much attention from teachers or ask questions. It's also feels a little isolated from other students. So I guess my main, just what I wanted to address was that I understand the challenges and I wanted to say thank you, but I would just really like to know your opinion on, I guess, knowing when we would be able to go back to school. I don't know if that really makes much sense, but thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Elise. Next up, we have Ms. Erin Hobner, followed by Luis Strouch, and then Rachel Ensler. So Erin, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Good. Good evening, PSD board members. 9 months is too long for our kids to be out of school with no date for possible return, especially for secondary. It's disappointing that we didn't get to open when the opportunity presented itself, and now we're behind other districts in planning. We do not want to continually revisit. We want a proposed date to work towards for all levels of secondary. Additionally, if we're already looking at a hybrid model, with those wanting to stay remote doing so, why would we tonight be suggesting a staggered re-entry? Why are we not treating our children, regardless of grade level, with the same opportunity to learn. The district assured us that we would have a choice in our learning platform. Just as those wanting to utilize remote learning have been given that option, those of us who know that the mental, emotional, and educational health of our children is best served in an in-person setting have the equal right to this as well. Let us not forget that last year when we went remote, grading policies were adjusted to accommodate the challenges of remote learning for teachers and kids alike. This school year so far has proved an even bigger challenge to both. And yet as a district, we have made no adjustments to grading policies. This is not only hurting grades, but as Janelle Sloan mentioned earlier, more importantly, how our children feel about themselves at the core and school in general. Teachers are overwhelmed, students are disengaged and depressed, and we parents are frustrated. If we wait until there is zero risk factor for everyone, there is quite literally no path back to in-person learning. As a community of character, we ask for leadership, regular clear communication and collaboration. There should not be weeks and weeks passing without specific updates on our reopening status, and we should not have to wait until January 14th to learn the next steps and revisit something as essential as our children's education. We can do better for all of our kids. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see Luis Strouch anymore, so we will roll to Rachel Ensler. Rachel, if you're with us, go ahead.
I'm unmuted now. As a longtime member of the PUSD community, as a parent of 4 district alum, resident, volunteer, and teacher, I am seriously concerned for the health and safety of students and staff as we head towards reopening. We need a plan, a clear and consistent plan in writing for how we will return to school safely. My concerns about the vague plan for returning to school in person are too numerous to list here, and I'm sure have been or will be echoed by others. My focus is on exhorting the cabinet and board to present a written district-specific plan for reopening. Again, we do not have a plan specific to our district in writing outlining safety protocols for PUSD for our children, and those should be in place when we return to elementary school. For example, we do not know how to arrange furniture in our classrooms, the required spacing between desks, how students will use the restroom, the number of people in a given space based on square footage, not by dividing the number of students in a class by 2. If students can use books from a common classroom library, if there will be multiple access points in a classroom for hand sanitizer, and the list goes on and on and on. Staff have been given differing answers to these questions for classroom to classroom at the same site and from school to school across the district. Just this evening, I heard Mr. Hernandez and Principal Gates say that desks will be spaced 6 feet apart, but I have been verbally instructed by my site that they can be anywhere from 4 to 6 feet apart and that this might differ from classroom to classroom and teacher to teacher. The overarching plan for our school district is not consistent or clear, nor is it in writing. Repeatedly, I've been referred to the county guidelines, which are articulated as suggestions and not mandates. Staff and family need a district-specific document in writing they can refer to ensure that we are consistently across the entire district doing our best to keep our children, staff, and therefore our community as healthy and safe as possible. Teachers should be asked for input, certainly, but we should not be asked to make individual decisions about the health and safety of our students and ourselves and how our classrooms are set up. Our district cabinet and board should be taking input from staff across the district, consulting experts, and reviewing the county guidelines to develop a clearly written plan specific to our district that is implemented in all schools, clear, comprehensive, and cohesive in content. We cannot be safe if we don't know what we're doing. We cannot be equitably safe if we are not all following the same guidelines.
Counselor,
We cannot reopen until we have a written district plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Christine Lutz, followed by Scott Buser, and then Rachel Wysong. And I see a Scarlett Lutz, so if that's Christine Lutz, then
that's me. Sorry about that. I thought I changed it earlier.
No problem.
But that's who I'm speaking for. Hi, my name's Christine Lutz. basically, I just have to say, I've said my piece many times about how disappointed I am with the district, teachers, and board. I've sent many emails and had phone calls, and still our kids are in the same place as they were 10 months ago. Although I'm appreciative of learning about the planning from multiple outlets, including sufficient PPE, the HVAC filters testing, contract for staff, and more, the past 9 months or 10 months, I can't even keep track anymore, have been a complete eye opener of how terrible this has all been ran. It doesn't seem that any of us are cared for. And I know that in my emails and responses back, you tell us that we are, but it does not feel that way. We are feeling lost, alone. And it's hard to look at our kids sometimes when they don't know what to do in so many aspects of their day. We read countless emails of all the things that you've accomplished, but the transparency that you claim is there is still not there. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's set in place. We don't have answers to simple questions that need to be answered. When can we go back? If we can go back when we're in a red tier in 2 weeks, then, and that's following the county's guidelines, when can we go back? It seems that once we're told something, it's immediately changed and you've completely lost the trust of your community. This is my 4th meeting being spoken at, and I'm not talking till 10 o'clock in the evening. I've been on this call for 3 hours. I didn't get to put my children to bed. I'm exhausted from a day of teaching and working a full-time job. And I think we just need better and more clear answers. Thank you for your time. No.
Next is Scott Buser, followed by Rachel Wysong, and then Kristen Springer.
Hello, members of the school board and executive team. My name is Scott Buser. I'm the parent of 3 students in PUSD. I'm an 11-year resident. I wanted to spend a minute saying I support reopening the schools. But what I support more is learning. And I'm concerned about what learning I do not see happening in the current environment. Had the luxury of working from home for 9 months. I've witnessed this school year, and I'm appreciative of the teachers and all the planning that goes into the lessons that they've got for the students. But from what I can gather, about 50% of content is being taught this year. So students are at a disadvantage. Every day that they're not in the classroom, they're more and more disadvantaged. Not to mention the non-classroom learning that students get while being in school. 0 of that is happening. So learning in the classroom is important. Being in the classroom is important. I think we have focused a lot on process during this meeting and other meetings. I think we need to focus more on accelerating the process, perhaps even considering setting a date as if starting the first day of school and saying, parents, this is when the first day of school is happening. Are you going to be there? That maybe is the survey question we should be asking. For parents who don't want their students to be in school, let them stay home. But for the parents who do want their students in school, set a date, run it concurrently. So you've got every campus reopening with some part of it on day 1, some part of elementary school, some part of middle school, some part of high school, all concurrently so that we can accelerate this process. Thank you for your time.
Rachel, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna hope so. As a parent in the district, I feel completely disheartened by how things have been conducted in regards to the school opening. Despite attending and speaking at all the school board meetings for the past few months, I have no idea if any progress has been made into actually opening the schools and if we have a hope or chance of opening the schools this year. At the moment, it feels like you, by which I mean the board and the teachers union, are probably waiting us out and just aren't going to open this year. You didn't file waivers when you could. You didn't get the safety work done so we could open when Alameda County was in the red tier. Somewhere between the teachers and the board, negotiations fell through that would allow the students who live in this district and attend public school to actually attend public school this year. Despite the majority of students and families wanting to go back and copious scientific evidence demonstrating the relative safety of sending back at the very least our youngest students, Pleasanton students are not getting even close to the best at the moment. I want to say that I've come to learn more about the cabinet and board members, and I can tell you are trying your best, and we have been lucky to have been supported by a great principal and a wonderful teacher this year. But when I speak to parents in the area, the sentiment is that the teachers union is fighting to not get back in the classroom. If this is not the case, then you better make it known. Based on what I heard tonight, that's what's going on. What is stopping a deal from being made? Can we get to the point where once we are in the red tier for 2 weeks, everything is ready and in place to go back? I implore you, teachers and board, if you care about the students, if you care about the families, do something to make us feel heard. It is not enough to say, I hear you. You have to actually do what we would like to do at some point. We deserve an option to get back in the classroom. Parents I speak to are increasingly finding other options, daycares, private schools, or simply no longer making their kids turn in work. Why is it okay for classified staff, daycare teachers, and others to teach our children, but not our actual teachers? In response to Laura Martinez's comments earlier, yes, we are ready to take temperatures and answer questionnaires every day. We are doing this already at our daycares and preschools and other places we have cobbled together care. It is condescending to think we wouldn't be up to that task. We want our kids back in the classroom. I would encourage you to keep working and get the deal done. We parents and students are ready and deserve the option to get back on campus. I implore you to make a plan to get students back in the classroom before August 2021. Because if you don't, this feeling that maybe you're letting these kids down will turn into the fact that you let these kids down.
Okay, next we have Kristen Springer. Thank you for letting us know that you will not be able to join this evening. So next we have Christina Young, followed by Nate Sullivan, and then Kate Delgado.
This is Christina Young. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I have a student who is a junior at Amador High School, and I just have a few things to say. Basically, everyone's touching on it. I am very disappointed that as of October 13th, when Alameda County said elementary school kids could resume, and 3 to 6 weeks thereafter, secondary students would be able to resume, that we didn't have a plan in place to make that happen, and that we're still negotiating. I'm very disappointed that listening to this conversation today that we don't have an actual plan to get our kids in high school. And as I know we talk about 6th and 9th graders being important because they haven't been to the high school or the middle school, and I agree that that's important. But when you think about your sophomores, juniors, and seniors, the ones that are like starting to spread their wings and ready to move on, they're not going to be ready. And so for that reason, I feel that, you know, it's very important that they get back in school. I'm also frustrated because I feel, and this maybe has nothing to do with PUSD, it has to do with Alameda County, it has to do with the state of California, but I have family in Germany who have been in school in full person, 26 kids in a classroom. They change classes. There's no right ring in the hands. They believe their kids need to be in the classroom. Everyone's masked up, and they go. And they only recently went to a hybrid. For the oldest kids, they went to a hybrid, but the littlest kids don't wear masks. Everybody's in school because they believe, first of all, the science has shown that the little kids are not the super spreaders. The high school students wearing masks, everyone's behaving and doing the right thing. And our kids need to be educated. This is the future. This is our future. And our future is being let down right now by PUSD, by Alameda County, by state of California. And I am frustrated as a parent. I would like to see an actual plan that says that the day that Alameda County says we can start, that Pleasanton has put their plan together and it's a go day. It should have been a go day on October 13th for elementary school. Elementary school should have been in the classroom on the 13th as soon as Alameda County said it was okay.
Thank you,
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Nate Sullivan, go ahead, and then we'll have Kate Delgado, and then we have an Adam, but I don't think he's with us. So Nate, go ahead.
Patrick, if Nate's not available, let's move on to the next speaker.
I think his audio is now showing. Nate, are you able to? All right, Nate. We'll come back to you if we're able to get audio for you. So we'll roll to Kate Delgado next.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, I actually signed up my name, but it's my son, Luke Castro, who is a senior at Amador, that wants to speak to you tonight.
Hello, school board. 2020 has been a crazy, unprecedented year, one no one could have seen coming. Many extracurriculars have been lost so far, such as dances, rallies, Dawn Squad activities, and potentially sports seasons too. The absence of these events have made it very difficult to stay connected with one another, as schools conducted on a screen at our homes. As the first half of our school year comes to a close, it is looking more and more likely that my fellow class and I won't receive the opportunity to partake in the senior year experience we have longed for since freshman year. The cliche, "you don't know what you have until it's gone," rings especially true in this situation. Students find themselves in. I'll be the first person to admit that I didn't appreciate school while it was in session. However, now that it's gone, words cannot describe how much I miss walking to my classes with my friends, receiving in-person instruction from teachers, and participating in the school spirit activities that bring a sense of pride and togetherness to the whole school. It's for these reasons that I urge the district to reopen schools second semester. If they're not, people will begin to feel even more isolated and alone than ever before. Bring back schools and bring back unity among students. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nate, I just want to check back. Are you able to unmute yourself? We'll keep rolling. We'll come back. Next is Darren Leggett, followed by Andrea Leggett, and then Victor.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Darren. Yeah.
Thank you, board and district members. My name is Darren Leggett, parent of a fifth grader at Vintage Hills and a junior at Amador Valley. We moved to Pleasanton many years ago, drawn here by, among many other things, the incredible schools and teachers in the area. We were not disappointed. I'm an owner of a small business hit hard by the first shutdown and are now breathing through a straw from this latest shutdown. We understand the concern of this pandemic. We get it. And we have been doing our part to keep our patrons and our community safe. Obviously, adding to this stress is the shuttering of our schools to put distance learning in place. I hear many families and their students are thriving with their Zoom calls with amazing work of our teachers, but many are not. We are one of those families that is not. Our junior honor roll athlete is struggling, especially with his classes that typically have labs. Although our fifth grader was included in a Vintage Hills cohort, thank you, Michael O'Brien, he still greatly misses Mrs. Viles and his classmates in the classroom. I've heard the dark winter of COVID is coming. What I argue equally concerning is the dark winter of continued isolation of our kids from their classrooms. The cohorts that were put in place are working. So please, at a minimum, can we get the hybrid learning negotiated, clearly negotiated, back in place this January, so at least our students can have some semblance of normalcy. We can do it safely, they can do it safely, you can do it safely. Opening our schools back up can also draw the nervous parents back out of the shadow with the proof that our schools can open safely and operate safely. Thank you.
Next we have Andrea.
Hi,
then Victor, and then we'll end with, we'll try to swing back to Nate.
Perfect. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Andrea.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity. For one, I do believe PUSD is doing their very best. I do understand there are a lot of bureaucracies involved in a lot of decisions you all have had to make. I am pleased that certain things like the HVAC and working on the rapid test has finally or is getting finalized. So incredibly happy about that. So I know you all are doing your best. However, we have been at this for 9 months, 10 months, as some had suggested prior. I do also want to comment on the cohorts. My husband mentioned that it is somewhat of a success. I will say we were not picked for the original one. Kelly had asked some questions of this board. We were allowed to participate when someone actually couldn't come to the cohort, because obviously it's only from 8:15 to 1:15. So you have to be able to pick up your child at 1:15. With full-time jobs, that's very difficult. So when you take a look at the hybrid approach, I really encourage this board to take into account those parents who have both parents working full-time jobs. It's going to be a challenge. I also would like to talk a bit about some of the data. I believe in your presentation, you need to talk about Pleasanton, not just Alameda. We should not be subject to the county. We are in the 4th quartile. Oakland is in the 1st, and that is why we are in the purple. So we need to know all the facts. Last comment, if we do not get schools open, I would like to see a proposal from this board that takes into consideration the emotional welfare of our kids, because suicides are and always have been the #2 death rate of teenagers and middle schoolers. And that will be the next thing we will have to contend with. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we'll have Victor. Then we'll swing back to Nate. And we had a late comment come in from Maria White. So if she's able to join us, we'll take her, but that will be our last comment for the night.
Good evening. My name is Victor. I'm pleased to see a very well diversified group here. Nice audience. Thank you very much for hearing me. I'm a father, a husband, a small business owner, and a previous Little League coach and a scout leader. My wife, Michelle, and I have 2 boys in the PUSD school system, both attending Amador High. I'm here to express my concerns regarding COVID and school closures. Many of you may be offended by the comments and opinions I'm about to share, so hit mute or don't say you were not warned. COVID has been a complete nightmare for many people who have lost their jobs, their businesses, their loved ones, and much more, as they are being labeled as unessential. Many others have managed to keep moving forward, their jobs left intact, protected as essential. The entire school system falls into this latter category of essential for now. I say for now, since the school system is now being severely scrutinized by the general public, mostly parents like myself who are extremely skeptical of the schooling program's ability to perform successfully through this period. California schools in general were struggling hard enough to perform satisfactorily pre-COVID. We are blessed to have one of the best school systems in the state here in Pleasanton. However, our children are now struggling to hit the traditional benchmarks via online schooling. Many students have not, and cannot adapt to a cyber school platform and the way of learning. Many kids like my own thrive on and retain information much better with a face-to-face teacher-student interaction. According to the data collected over the past several months, COVID has not affected kids in the same way it has affected the elderly population. We all know that. The data is published for us to see and to share. What we don't agree upon is the transmission. In my world, according to what I've learned over the past 50+ years, Children are the liver and kidneys of our social system. Their young, highly energized, highly adaptive immune systems are able to take in and defang most of the bacteria and virus bugs that would otherwise transfer unchecked.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time is up. Can you finish up your comment, please?
Absolutely. I think this is a crock of shit. I think people need to get back to school. We need to come up with a plan and do it soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we will, Nate, if you're able to unmute yourself, we'd like to give you an opportunity to speak. Looks like he's still having difficulties. We will move to Maria White, will be our last commenter for the evening.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. It was very last minute, but I just wanted to jump on and just thank everybody who's been working through this very difficult time, not only in the classroom like myself as a teacher here, but all of our different members that include our district employees, our cabinet, our board members. It's just been a difficult time making really difficult decisions that aren't going to be received happily by everyone, no matter what that is. With that being said, I just wanted to jump on really fast and just to make it very clear to the public that not only as a teacher in the district, but as a member in our executive board of our union, that the union is not doing anything at all to prevent our students from going back into the classroom. Our union is actively working to provide the safest possible environment for not only ourselves, but for our students, because we care about our students, and that's our ultimate goal. So just to alleviate any concerns, there has been at no point any type of weird, evil plan on our part to do anything other than to negotiate the safest possible environment so that we can all safely be in that room together to actually help them learn and to ultimately do what we love, which is to be there with our students and teach them. I appreciate Dr. Woodward and Dr. Haglund just really talking about how complex this all is, because it really is. And I hope that everybody, despite what your perception may be on the surface, just know that there is so much going on behind the scenes and that everyone's goal is to provide for these students. So thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak, even though it was very last minute.
Thank you, Maria. All right. We've had public comment. Board members, do you have any further questions, or do you want to make some comments? And then this is an action item. I requested it to be an action item to make it clear. Basically, we're not able to do anything that that is prohibited by the Alameda County health rules, which is that we're in the purple tier. So our plans that we have made and had set a date are not able to be carried out without the changing of our status from the health department. But with that being said, I'd like to hear from my fellow trustees. And then we do have, like I said, several other items that we have to vote on tonight. Steve, did you have comments?
Just one. Well, I have two, but one I could ask on the weekend. The one comment I have is I'm hoping that we're looking at the grading and relaxing some of the late tardy testing of students. I'm hoping that Dr. Woodward and her team and teachers are meeting to discuss a lot of concerns that I've been hearing, and a lot of concerns I know that is going on with some of our students that aren't accessing the curriculum. That'd be my only comment.
Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say that, hearing a lot of things today, appreciate all the speakers and all that type of thing and the emails we've gotten. But, My understanding of what we've heard today is as follows, is that everybody sitting here on this Zoom call wants to get the students back in the classroom as soon as possible. Everybody who's called has said that they want to get the students back as soon as possible. I think we all share that goal. There are logistical and legal reasons why we can't set a firm date to do that. And there's just no way around it. But what I have heard are tireless administration, and I appreciate all the work you guys have put in. It is incredible. And you do not get the credit for what you've had to do this whole time. Say is that the day that we go into the red tier starts the clock of 14 days before you can actually, go back to school, right? I mean, that is the law. So what I've heard everybody say here is that it is our intention that should that occur, that will be our plan. And then it's a matter of exactly how we do it. And what I've heard is that there's a recommendation from administration to do this in a bit of a staggered approach to get everybody together and ready at the right time and so forth. I've heard that we want to potentially go TK to 2, follow that shortly thereafter 3 to 5, and possibly 6th and 9th grades, and then follow that with the remaining grades. That's kind of what I heard. I correct me if I'm wrong, guys. That seems like a plan to me. Now, there are a lot of details, logistical details, but we don't have to have every logistical detail completely laid out on December 15th, when we're not even there is no chance we're going back in before, 14 days, probably the earliest would be 14 days after January 4th. And we have a board meeting on the 14th that will really nail that down. So we have all the equipment, all of the procedures, processes in place to get back into the classroom safely. They are there. It's just a matter of implementing them. Janet had a great little video on, these things happen and they don't take several months to put in place. Marking 6 feet spots on the ground can happen rather quickly. So I have no doubt that we will be ready to open when we say that we're ready to open. The plan is, as in my mind, is as what Dr. Haglund and his team have talked about today. And so I completely appreciate everybody's frustration. You want to know it's January, whatever, and this is the group that's coming in. There's no physical way we can possibly tell that. And sorry, I keep going on here, but we have a vaccine coming. That if depending on how that's rolled out, we don't even know what things are going to look like on January 14th. They may be even drastically different than they are today. So based on what I heard, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that is the plan. And I think we just, need to publicize it. Kelly, you had a good point. In one of your things is make sure it's out there, blatant and obvious what it is, and we move forward. And one more thing, definitely invite our unions to come to the table to negotiate the agreements that we've talked about in the spirit of Maria's comments. Let's make sure that's all in place over the next couple of weeks so that there's no issues there. Thank you.
Trustee Carrion.
Thank you. So I just want to say that I'm very concerned because we have like 35,000 new COVID cases a day. So I think it's pretty clear that we cannot open on January 4th. I think that is very clear, and I totally support Dr. Haglund's recommendation. But I also feel like there's a disconnect between what we're doing behind the scenes and the perception of some parents. A lot of parents are saying that there's no plan. So I feel like we need to do some more communication. So I really, really would like to advocate that we reconvene a reopening task force, because in that task force, you could do so many things. Like number one, Rachel brought up a lot of great comments. We don't know what the logistics are going to be in the classroom. We don't know about sharing of materials. We don't know how to arrange. Those are things that could be solved in this committee. I also think that there's parents who feel like they have great ideas of how to get kids back. I mean, maybe they can do research on how high school have been able to get back in the classroom. We need to maybe think of ideas outside the box, you know, like what if it's working for 80% of the people and it's not for 20%? How do we get those 20% back? We could do that at this reopening committee. We also need to brainstorm ways to help with mental health. There's a lot of really crucial issues. And I really believe that we are stronger together, and that if we get teachers, staff, and parents, we could problem solve a lot of these issues. So again, we can't open January 4th. I totally need to agree. We need to push that back, but we need to be involving our community in making some of these decisions as we move forward.
Trustee McCashy.
Well, it's a lot of information to take in, and it's been a very engaging conversation tonight. Have a lot of reflections. I have 3 children in the district. We represent 15,000 students roughly in the district. And so every child and every family is going to have their own story of how it's working. And for my 3 individual children, it's completely different for each child. You know, the role of instruction has evolved into now it's co-collaborative, and to piggyback off of Trustee Carrion, it's now a collaborative effort between the families and the teachers and the staff to help make things work for our children. I do feel it would be really nice. I've seen a couple independent from some PTAs offer some courses to really engage with teachers and the parents, helping to teach our children how to be more independent, how to manage their time, how to and also to kind of add in engagement. You know, sometimes the children, my children, for example, you know, they will sit through a Zoom, but then there's like a follow through. Does it really make sense? So that's heavily on my heart right now of, you know, how do we support our parents who are now being asked to co-collaborate with teachers and give them some of those accessible tools until we can, as already stated, go back into the red tier and really have an action plan for that. And then to just kind of piggyback off of what Trustee Miller was saying is that our best case scenario is, I'm thinking more, it's probably end of January, February. I think we need to be really realistic. The odds of the cases going down over this holiday break, probably not. So we need to be really realistic in our expectations, but then give the support for our families in the interim. It's a lot to take in, but I do appreciate, you know, the effort that the cabinet, Dr. Hagelin, our teachers, and parents, because we have to work through this together and stay strong. And one thing that I've been thinking about is the one thing I don't want to have happen, you know, our children need consistency. So with all the chaos that's going on. So I wanted to make it so that if we go back and if we go into hybrid, I want to have that strong sailing to the end of the year and not have to revert back into shelter in place, which is where we are right now. So those are some of my thoughts right now.
All good comments. The thing is we can't guarantee that won't happen. So it's not up to us what's going to happen with the rates. And I can appreciate the parents' comment about how Pleasanton's rates, you know, don't agree, you know, are lower and than the rest of Alameda County. Unfortunately, that's not up to us either to determine which county we belong in and which county's rules that we have to abide by. But I do appreciate the comment. Like I said, I think you guys are all been super thoughtful, and I understand everybody's frustration. I agree that it seems like, that, I mean, they keep saying, we don't have a plan. Well, we have a plan. We've had a plan since July 14th, and we were ready to go with it, to implement it when we got shoved back into the purple tier. So it isn't even the stay-at-home order. I think people need to understand that it's not even the stay-at-home order that's causing us to not be able to open class when we voted to open school for TK through 5. It's that we will need to be back in the red tier for at least 2 weeks before we can open schools. So, we had that plan, voted on that plan. We're ready to roll with that plan, and circumstances changed. So in the light of that, I would like to, and I can understand Dr. Hagland's recommendation of staggering the rollout. But, I feel like we were already prepared to open TK through 5 on January 7th now. And so I'd like to make a motion that that the date of opening TK through 5 is the date when we've been in the red tier for 2 weeks and we're allowed to reopen schools. And then 2 weeks after that, we open secondary. That's my motion. So we don't know when that date would be because we don't know when we'll be in the red tier for 2 weeks. So, but that at least sets a benchmark for a target that we can hit.
So should we do a second and then talk about it, or how's?
Yeah, so a second doesn't mean you agree with the motion. The second means you want to see the motion discussed. And there can be questions and comments and adjustments, or, or it can die for lack of a second.
I would second.
All right, or there's discussion.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm kind of thinking is that it's sort of a modification of that in a sense. Maybe it's TK to 2 on the first week, 3 to 5 the second week, with 6 and 9 also. And then the rest of them maybe 2 weeks after that or 1 week after that. So it's staggered a little bit. I don't know if Dr. Hagland, but I do think the recommendation from Dr. Hagland was wait until the 14th to make that call. Maybe I'm reading that wrong.
Well, my argument would be we don't need to wait until the 14th to decide that we're going to open elementary school when we've been in the red tier for 2 weeks.
No, I agree with setting the start based on the date that you move into the red tier, and then it's 2 weeks after that, or whatever the the rule is. I totally agree with that. I just don't know whether you then start staggering it that point, or you jump all the way to TK to 5 type of.
I would just make one comment that for the last couple of weeks the communication had been pre-K 5. So I'd prefer to keep that because that's what has been focused on. I understand the importance of staggering, but that has been the plan. And then as
What's been working through that, they're right there.
Right. So I would prefer not to break it back out to pre-K 2. I prefer to keep it pre-K 5. Then if we want to talk about how to chunk it for staggering, whether it be 6, 9, and then stagger it for the rest of the secondary. I understand the rationale for staggering. I completely understand from logistics, implementation, troubleshooting, but we don't want to cause any further delay for our students.
So David, can you reiterate the rationale for the staggering?
Who was the question to?
David.
David.
So when we proposed the idea before, it was to bring people back in smaller groups so that they could learn protocols. So younger kids some of them have not been on campus yet. And they need to figure out, how do I navigate, from my classroom to the bathroom, How do I get to know where the library is? You know, it's to get them to focus on some structural things for a few days. And if you recall, it was 4 days. If I remember correctly, Janelle, you can correct me, but I think it was 4 days. And then the next week, that next group came back. So we're not talking about a huge period of time. And same concept with the 6th and the 9th grade students is to give them time on campus, to get to know the facility, to get to know the protocols, to get to know each other, because they've not had a chance to do that. So that's what I proposed last time. And last time you voted to go pre-K 5. So it sounds like you want to do that again. So all I can do is bring my best thinking to the table and present it to you, and then you guys got to make a decision. I mean, that's the way that it goes. Janelle, do you want to add anything?
Well, can I ask a quick question before you respond, Janelle? Because I think you could help with this one too. Is what if you started with, pre-K to 2 or TK to 2, 6 and 9 all at the same time? Because that's totally different schools, totally different places, right? And then you followed up the next week or maybe 2 weeks later or whatever it is with the next group, 3 to 5, and then the rest of the high school and middle schoolers at that point. Is that a reasonable kind of hybrid to that? Because I kind of feel that, I mean, having been on campus, with the small cohorts, I mean, it's not like going back to campus the way it was, March 14th. It's a whole different thing. You got to walk, as Janet showed, you got to walk different places and all this kind of stuff. And so, I don't know, there does seem to be a lot of, it would be a little bit more chaotic, I think, if everybody jumped on campus the same day. I don't know. My gut feeling tells me that. But anyway, so.
Thank you so much, Trustee Miller. I've been thinking and talking about with staff how we open school and have, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids come back on the campus every fall. And it's just normally what we do. So we are now planning for smaller groups to come on campus, but the dynamics have changed so vastly. So in looping back to what Dr. Haglund said, the value, and I do realize it is slightly different from what we have been saying that we're going to do, but the value is that our parents will not be getting out of the cars with their students to walk their kiddos to the classroom as we've done before. We can't have that because we have to observe the distancing and we want to avoid visitors onto the campus. So if we were to go with the plan that Dr. Haglund just mentioned, what it would do is it would allow us to acclimate our littles that have never been TKs, they're 4. They're small, to be able to get to the campus with a little more support, maybe be able to find their way around without getting lost in a sea of first, second, third, fourth, or fifth grade students. Or even if we were to just say TK2, whatever it might be, it would allow a smaller amount of students on the campus. I want to reiterate, we have also done our very, very best planning, and I believe that our elementary schools are really in line and would be well prepared to get going when there is a shift. The principals and their staff have done tremendous work. I know this because we've been walking the campuses and we've looked at their presentations that they will deliver to our staff. And in those presentations, it will highlight the safety protocol, including the spacing of desks and everything that needs to happen. And that, of course, was paused due to being in the purple tier. So Trustee Miller, I would say that elementary has been gearing up for this. I think that my recommendation would be to stay that course. And then when we come back in January, a lot of the work with the risk mitigation team and the planning, the specifics will go into full force for our secondary sites. And I would definitely like to see our 6th and 9th grade students be able to transition back. And so that's the input I would add to the questions that have come up, and also to loop in to what Dr. Haglund stated previously.
All right, so actually there's a motion and a second on the floor, and we've had some discussion. But based on that, Steve, unless you have an objection, I'd like to withdraw the motion and make a substitute motion.
Sure. I just want to get open.
Yeah, me too.
Get a plan.
So my new motion is that when we are in the red tier for the 2 weeks, which is basically, we are told that it's safe to open schools, we would start with our TK through 2 following in a week, 3rd through 5th, and following the following week, we would roll out secondary, but that we would finalize those details at our January 14th meeting, because the chances of us being in the red tier for 2 weeks before then is pretty slim.
I will second that motion.
Hey, Joan, before we vote, would you go over the time frame again?
So when we are in the red tier for 2 weeks, whenever that is.
Okay.
Could be January 29th, could be February 15th. We do not know. We are not allowed, again, remind the folks, we are not allowed to open school until we're in the red tier for 2 weeks. So whatever date that is.
2 weeks.
And just to clarify, that would cover all communications, MOU requirements, and all that would follow in with that 14 day
3 days of
turnaround.
planning and all that stuff.
Yeah, just confirming.
Yeah, the day coming back, the hour to come, plan for those things. This would be when school would be open for students to be on campus.
I'm sorry, I didn't clarify. I meant that that the communication, the 10-day notice to staff that they're, going back to school and all that. That's what I meant.
So I would seek David's advice on that.
Because originally we were going to open the 4th, and we had to wait to the 7th. So
Right.
we'd have to get that done during those 2 weeks.
So Julio, do you want to jump in and talk about the impact to the MOU and what would be done?
Thank you, Dr. Haglund. So we do have an MOU that was slated to have an orientation on the 4th, 5th, and 6th of January, and we were ready to open school, as stated earlier, on January 7th for TK5 elementary. Unfortunately, given the circumstances, we're not able to do that. So this does not give us a set date, but we are meeting with APT on the 17th, 2 days from now, in order to negotiate those days, the orientation day as well as the transition days. So with this, if this is direction from the board, Michelle and APT, I will need to sit down and figure out what does that mean and how do we craft language to be able to satisfy the board's direction. So we will be meeting on the 17th. And then again, I believe on the 7th of January, hopefully we can come to terms again, as we did before, clearing the way to reopen school.
Joan,
Yes.
I need for you to clarify your motion or modify your motion. It should be pre-K through 2, not TK
Not
through 2.
TK,
Yeah, pre-K.
pre-K through 2, within a week, 3 through 5, and then within 2 weeks, the rollout of secondary. And that rollout details will be finalized on or discussed again on the 14th, at which time we'll hopefully already be in the red tier at some point, but there's no guarantee.
I'll second that.
And all of that is assuming that the guidance allows us to follow that pattern.
Yes, of course. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Are there any more questions or comments?
Just so, Joan, what you're saying, within 4 weeks, then our students will be back into the
Within 3 weeks.
Like you said, well, you get
By 1 week, you're going to roll out the second part of elementary, but 2 weeks from that first start date, you're going to roll out secondary.
all of secondary.
In some rollout plan to be determined on the 14th in January.
So 3 weeks.
Mhm. Based on starting the rollout of secondary, based on what we will learn and plan for, whether it's 6-9, whether it's whatever. We just need to set a date and start.
I would agree. I second.
I already
Mark already
second.
seconded. All right, any other questions? All right, let's call the vote. Trustee Makashi,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Maher,
Aye.
Trustee Carrion,
Aye.
Trustee Larson, aye as well. I'm sorry, you guys, that takes so long, but you know, this is the biggest issue we've got
Amy.
facing us.
The
And
last
I,
20 years.
yes, and I so appreciate all of your input and comments. And however, I need to ask our superintendent, it is now 11 o'clock. We have an hour left and there's about an hour and a half of items. Is there anything that can be postponed, or do we think we can move? Do we need to move anything, or can we power through it?
So I think looking at the agenda, we definitely need to do the CCEIS plan, and we need to do for sure the first interim report. The developer fee report, the learning loss mitigation fund report, and can be done at the next meeting. And I can utilize my authorities to approve 17.7. We can bring back those as ratifications if that's okay with the board. Danelle, what about MAP? Is there action needed on that?
There does need to be an official report, and our secondary director said she can go very quickly on that. So that should take only a few minutes.
So we should be able to get through those things. And if we have time and you want to do the HVAC things, we can do those pretty quickly too, I think.
And I believe we still need to return to closed session for an additional item that we.
This is true.
Okay. All right, let's try that. So 17.2.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'd like to introduce this item. I'll do so quickly. It's a report and discussion of possible action to improve the CCEIS plan, Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan. Director Shay Galetti is going to make this presentation as quickly as she can, although it's extremely important. And I just want to underscore that this plan will serve as a foundation and the starting point for our building upon the equity work that has already been happening in our district. And we will be looking to use this plan to be able to create our next steps. So with that, I turn it over to Director Galetti.
Good evening. It's my goal to move through this quickly and keep everyone awake, but at the same time do justice to what this plan means for our district. The Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services Plan, it is deemed the CSACE plan, and that is to address the significant disproportionality in special education. The first step is understanding what significantly disproportionate means. Disproportionality is the overrepresentation of a particular racial or ethnic group in special education. The California Department of Ed monitors this, and when a district has been cited for 3 years in a row as disproportionate, they have become significantly disproportionate. Currently, we are significantly disproportionate in the over-identification of Hispanic and Latinx students within special education under a specific learning disability. As you can see from the bullet below, we are disproportionate in those 3 areas. This means we have not hit the 3-year mark. Once you have hit that 3-year mark, you are required by the CDE to complete the CSACE plan. And really the CSACE plan is a programmatic improvement plan in which you have to collect quantitative and qualitative data, complete an analysis, and uncover the root causes to the disproportionality so that you can take action steps to address it. It is important to note that 15% of federal dollars received for special education are required to be set aside each fiscal year over a 27-month period of time to be spent on the action plan. These services need to supplement, which means they need to provide new or increased services to our target populations. The CSACE is actually a 4-phase process that you can see here. Tonight, I'm going to walk you quickly through each of PUSD's phases through this process. The first phase was establishing our leadership team, stakeholder group, and technical assistant facilitators. You can see there the myriad of people that make up the leadership team. It is student services, teaching and learning, and special education. Our stakeholder group is comprised of district and school site administration, special education staff, general education staff, and most importantly, parent and community members of our target populations. In addition, we are required to contract with technical assistance facilitators that are approved by the CDE. Their role is to help districts through this process. I am not going to go through the key terms in the interest of time, but please know that on this slide and the next slide, these are here for reference because these words are used throughout the plan and referenced. Phase 2 is one of the largest components of this process. It is a complete data analysis of many different things. We did 4 different types of data analysis. First, we looked at all of our school and district data, from our dashboard to our reclassification rates for our EL students. We looked at suspension reports. We looked at CASP data. The next data pull we did was a special education student file review. What this means is our school psychologist, PUSD school psychologist, randomly selected 78 students who are currently in special education, their files to review, and they collected data on the student's journey from general ed to special education. Next, we did the NYU Steinhardt. This is a tool districts use to determine the racial and ethnic disproportionality and the risk factors for different ethnic groups to enter special education. Finally, we had focus groups led by our technical assistant facilitator. Each of the groups listed there were independent groups. The technical assistant facilitators used the Wisconsin, which is an annotated checklist for disproportionality that collects qualitative data. After we have collected all that data, it was time for the analysis and discovery of the root cause. I have listed here our most significant key findings from the data. And I would like to take time and read these because these are what is going to be at the heart of what our root causes are, which will later lead to our measurable outcomes and action plan. Hispanic and Latinx students are 3 times as likely to be at risk for qualifying for special education under specific learning disability. This is in comparison to our white student population that is 1.5 times as likely, and our Asian population that is less than half as likely at risk. Our African American student suspension makes up a total of 10.17% of all suspensions. However, they only comprise 1.4% of our total population. This was taken from data from 2019-2020 school year. In our file review, we found that basic reading skills and reading comprehension were the primary concern for the majority of Hispanic and Latinx students qualifying for special education. In addition, the majority of students qualified within our district, not outside districts, in 1st and 2nd grade. There is a lack of consistency that was a theme across all of our focus groups in the practices of our district's multi-tiered systems of support. And finally, both the qualitative and quantitative data reflect that in comparison to white and Asian students, the PUSD student experience for students with disabilities and students of color is dramatically different. This leads, and we're still in phase 2, to our root causes. We worked with our technical assistant facilitators to disaggregate all of that data to look at the key findings and identify our two root causes. One, a lack of a fully integrated multi-tiered system of support at all levels. And two, cultural dissonance and implicit bias within our system that result in inconsistent application of discipline policies, procedures, and practices. So this moves us to phase 3, because the CSACE plan is really a catalyst for change and systemic change within our district. Our first goal is targeted at our multi-tiered systems of support and working to connect those aspects between our RTI and our PBIS so that we reduce the classification rate for our Hispanic and Latinx students. Within the CSACE plan, we have to identify target populations in which the activities and services will benefit students most at risk of being classified for special education. Moving on to our measurable outcome 2, this is to combat our second root cause, which is to implement a multi-year master equity plan that addresses cultural responsive pedagogy and anti-bias discipline practices, which will result in a decrease in suspensions for our African American students. Again, similar to the first measurable outcome, we needed to address the target population. Based on, for both of our measurable outcomes, we used CalPADS to determine the percentage of students, what schools, and what students were most at risk. The action items are built around our root causes to address and correct what is occurring. The first one is to create a multi-year equity master plan, and connected to that is to hire a coordinator of equity and access. The coordinator of equity and access would be instrumental in fulfilling the CSACE duties and actions that are in this plan and working in conjunction with our equity master plan. This would be a new position, and if approved, the plan approved tonight would be brought, the job description would be brought to the board at a later time. In addition, our highest need right now is at Valley View Elementary School and hiring a second intervention specialist to work with the students who are at risk of qualifying for special education to provide targeted intervention in an MTS framework. We need to update various board policies and administrative regulations that will also be brought to the board for your review. With now hiring our new English language acquisition coordinator, we need to revise our English learner master plan, and we need to also create a special education evaluation process for our English language learners. We need to develop better support plans, and we need to monitor target student population. For those of you who are on the board, you remember last year I spoke about our interventions and the lack of inconsistency. This is where we also need to focus our attention. We are going to create school JEDI teams, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, to create a systemic process throughout the district. And importantly, we are going to facilitate professional development in early literacy, which will include training in letters, Wilson, English language development, equity, culturally responsive pedagogy, and restorative justice practices. Now, phase 1 through 3 has been complete, and we actually are moving into phase 4. The first part of phase 4 actually comes tonight, and I'm asking you to approve the CSACE plan. Once we approve, I have to smile at this, as soon as it is approved, I will be emailing it to the California Department of Ed. The email's ready, it just I haven't hit send yet until the official approval happens. There will be quarterly CSACE stakeholder meetings and leadership team meetings to review the progress of the plan, to provide feedback, and to make changes as needed based on how we are progressing through the activities. We plan to have listening campaigns to involve our community at the targeted schools. You will also receive presentations each semester on the progress of our plan. An important aspect of the plan is ensuring that it will go beyond the 27 months. And so we will need to look at leveraging our LCAP funds and other grant funding in order to ensure that the activities we have in place will continue after the 27-month period. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to open it up to questions or comments. Thank you for being active listeners.
Questions? Mary Jo.
So Shay, this person that we're hiring would be for all the schools. And so are you just saying just those schools that are targeted? Because it seems like this is a a district-wide program.
It is both. In following with the CSACE plan and the guidance from the CDE, money spent within this plan, that 15%, which is $302,174 for our district, have to be used on our target schools and our target student populations. So this work will primarily be at those schools. It will expand with the work from myself, Namarta, our secondary director of education, special ed, to expand to the other schools. But this person would be focused on our target schools as specified within the plan and what is allowable within the budget to spend on the plan. I do have to say, and I didn't say this at the beginning, although I'm the only one speaking tonight, this really is a multi-division effort. I couldn't have done it without our assessment department, special education, and student services. It's something that crosses all levels and aspects of our system.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions. I would just applaud you and your team for putting together an amazing report. This is something I'm really passionate about, and I was extremely impressed with the in-depth data that you use to identify the target schools to focus on. And just the amount of data that you provided for us as trustees to go through this. And it was very obvious to me the amount of work that it has taken to put all of us together. Implicit bias and, disproportionate classification of students into special education, as well as, the suspension rates, it's definitely very alarming. And I applaud that this is a great opportunity to help, improve on this. And I also look forward to hearing an update on this and how it can roll out into the other schools, not just the targeted for schools that have been identified thus far, because this is, the cultural pedagogy and implicit bias training, it has to go, through the entire district, pre-K 2 all the way up into the high school, and really value this initiative. And I can't wait I hope to get an update soon on the progress of how this starts to roll out. The outstanding report. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. We appreciate it and agree that it's a whole district movement.
Good.
Just for the public's benefit, this is an effort to put some teeth into everyone's efforts. So we've been working on these issues for a long time, as have other LEAs in California and around the country. But good intentions aren't enough. And so the 15% of our special education funding, to somebody listening, that doesn't sound like a big deal. Okay, you're just going to spend the money differently. Well, considering the fact that the federal government doesn't give us the full funding of special education that they are committed to when they passed the Individuals with Disabilities Act, this really means and so since we, from the general fund, we contribute money into special education to cover the costs of the programs that they don't fund now. So taking 15% of that means it's just 15% of that we have to contribute 15% more than we would have. That 300,000 is going to come right out of our general fund, in my opinion. So I think it's a great report too, and it's great work, and I applaud the efforts. And we really need to, on behalf of these kids, we really need to see it through. So I really appreciate the report.
Just a couple of comments too. Thanks you guys, but two things. One is two things I appreciated most about the report. Number one is the honest self-reflection there in certain areas. I think that is really, really refreshing. No candy coating anything. You guys really, you use data, right, which is important. And then you were, being very honest about what we needed to do. The other thing is you have measurable outcomes, literally putting numbers to where you want to get to and stuff. So it should be fairly easy for us to, Kelly, to your point, is next year or the year after, whatever, see the progress towards those goals. So great job. I'm 100% supportive.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I shall move approval of the CCEIS report. CSACE.
Is there a second?
Sounds like you're saying thank you.
I'll second. I'm very passionate about this.
Oh, you should have made the motion. Sorry, Kelly.
All right, sorry. Trustee Bokashi.
Aye.
Trustee Miller.
Aye.
Trustee McCarrion.
Aye.
Trustee Maher.
Aye.
And aye. So it's unanimous. Congratulations. Thank you very much. I look forward to updates. 17.3 ninth grade math placement.
Don't forget to hit send, Shay.
Is it okay to just begin?
Yes, go ahead, Namarta. Sorry.
So the Director Graywall, 17.3 report discussion update on the ninth grade math placement. Go ahead, Namarta.
Thank you. And I apologize. I'm going to talk fast because I've been told I have just a few minutes. Okay, the annual math placement exam given to ninth grade students. Thank you, trustees and members of cabinet, for hearing this presentation. Senate Bill 359, the California Mathematics Placement Act, requires that we have a fair, objective, and transparent mathematics placement policy for ninth grade students. So we'll review, ninth grade course enrollment, beginning of year math assessment data, and first year Algebra 1 passage rates. This chart here is a summary of the math pathways available to PUSD high school students, with the exception of some special education math courses and accelerated math courses beyond the traditional math pathways that are not shown here. Jumping right into the course enrollment overview for ninth grade, our current students, 51% take algebra, 22% take either geometry or honors geometry, and the other 27% are engaged in other math courses, including advanced math classes and some remedial math classes as well. Of the students in algebra, what we're seeing here on the left are the course enrollment broken down by ethnic groups, and on the right side we have student groups, including our students with disabilities, socioeconomically disadvantaged, GATE students, English learners, and students with 504 plans. The ethnic and student group breakdown is fairly consistent with the demographics of our district population overall in Algebra 1. The same data for the geometry course shows that the primary difference between Algebra 1 and geometry is that there are fewer English learner and GATE students enrolled in geometry, but there are more students enrolled with 504 plans. The ethnic data is fairly consistent. In honors geometry, we see some significant underrepresentation of our ethnic groups, specifically Hispanic and African-American students, and also student groups, students with disabilities, those who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and English learners. Taking a look at the math diagnostic assessment summary, it's administered in the first 20 days of school. It assesses algebra and geometry skills, and based on the results of the assessment, teachers will discuss potential schedule changes with students based on their mastery of skills. As a result of the 2020 assessment, 4 students at Foothill were moved from Algebra 1 to geometry, and 1 student moved from geometry to Algebra 2. Amador had no placement changes. A majority of students actually elected to remain in their current math course at the time of the assessment. The data that you see for the students that met standard or exceeded standard for Algebra 1 is fairly consistent with prior years in that they have not yet learned the standards, which is why they're in algebra. Next slide. This is the chart that demonstrates the Algebra 1 passage rate comparison over a 3-year period from 2017-18 all the way through 2019-20. The passage rate overall was 91.9%, with specific groups scoring about 10 to 15% below that. Those groups included our Hispanic students, English learners, socioeconomic disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities. Looking at prior years, the data is somewhat consistent. There was a dip in 17-18 that's comparable to the 19-20 data. To summarize, key points from the Algebra 1 data comparison show that all grade levels had a slight decrease with the exception of sophomores. There was a decrease across all ethnicities except for African American and Filipino students who saw some increases. And then the English learners and socioeconomically disadvantaged students also had decreases. Increases were seen with African American students from 50 to 87% passage rates and Filipino students from 96 to 100% passage rates, but those are small data sets, so the change is a higher proportion. The gender comparisons are fairly consistent, 91% for males, 92.7% for females, and overall we saw a 3% decline from the prior year, but the numbers are in line with the year prior to that. Next steps will be to engage our teachers, counselors, administrators, parents, and guardians in discussions regarding student math placement and to further analyze student growth and implement interventions for the underperforming student groups, and then to continue monitoring professional development efforts and the effectiveness of instruction through qualitative feedback and student performance results. Time.
All right, so questions for anyone? This is not an action item. This was a discussion item. We're just required to get an update on our math placement. But if you have a
I have a question, but I don't want to open a can of worms here, so I hesitate to ask. But my question is, since we've implemented fully Common Core, have we seen improvement in the overall passage rate or measures like this versus prior to Common Core implementation?
Trustee Miller, what if we look into that in greater depth and get back to you in a board update?
Be good.
Would that work?
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm happy to do that. Thanks.
Anyone else?
No.
All right, Marta, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marta.
Sorry we had to hurry through it. It's an important topic. And
that's okay. Thank you for listening.
Yes. All right, 17.4 first interim.
Great. Okay. Let me just, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I know that everyone has received the report and the backup documents, so I'll keep the presentation brief and at a high level to provide an opportunity for question and answer. The main and most important thing is that the first interim report does meet the positive certification. However, there's a couple of big caveats that we need to discuss. One of them is there continues, as we see a great uncertainty around the pandemic and the impacts both to our finances and to the educational program for the current year and the coming years, as we have to probably do some remedial and catch-up work with our students. The expenditure plan that we have in this budget meets that positive certification because of the reserve levels that we have meeting the required state requirements. We'll go through the first interim in a little bit more detail, but what I do want to indicate is that once you make the adjustments for some of our carryover expenditures and some of our one-time expenditures, the district is deficit spending in the current year about $2.4 million. Two of our other funds are also of a concern for us. One of them is our child nutritional services program, our food services program, which is deficit spending at about $1.78 million this year, and our child care program, which is also deficit spending about $1 million this year, and both of them are pandemic related. If the flat funding continues for the next 2 fiscal years, there is going to be a special concern in the 22-23 fiscal year, and the district will need to make further reductions in that fiscal year of about $5 million. There is some good news in the financial data that's coming out. The Legislative Analyst Office at the state did report better revenues than projected. And so if those do materialize, that could mean some additional dollars for schools. However, we have to remember that the state is deferring about $12 billion this year into next year. And so we'll have to see how actually those dollars get divvied up, and if they will make the districts whole with that projected additional revenues. I'm not going to go through the details. Our revenues did increase as a result of both different carryover dollars, donations, and stuff, about $2.66 million. Our expenditures did also increase from our 45-day budget, about $8.84 million. The majority of that was related to carryover dollars from last year, in addition to additional revenues coming in. Those dollars are also going out, and we have the Harvest Park Library rebuilt. This is the typical chart of revenues. You'll see our LCFF this year is slightly less, and that's because our state and federal dollars include an additional $6 million of one-time learning loss mitigation funds. And part of that LCFF includes that supplemental grant for the students who meet those requirements. The expenditures is about 182 million of that. About 81% is on people. And then this year, again, our services and books and supplies expenditures are higher than typical years due to the one-time funds and some of the carryover. I'm going to go over some of the key factors that we're looking at in the coming, in the multi-year. And these are really critical as we go into basically second interim budget development. So we've been tracking the pandemic, and a lot of questions still remain as to once we go in hybrid, what it will be our operational costs in terms of PPE usage, cleaning supplies and such. And so that's one thing to consider. Again, will our cost increase for substitutes, teachers, and staffing as well? So there's still great uncertainty as how that will unfold. This is a breakdown of how we have spent our current CARES Act and learning loss mitigation funds, and we will meet our expenditure deadlines for the 30th of this month. As you can see, the majority of the costs have gone into either PPE or facilitating distance learning through our small cohort programs and providing distance learning materials and technology. That includes both technology for students and staff. Quickly, this is just the critical assumptions in the local control funding formula. Our out years where we are indicating a flat funding in terms of our COLA. And we're also right now indicating a slight decrease in our unduplicated. However, both our child nutrition program, working closely with student services and family liaisons, have been making phone calls to close that gap and get our families enrolled through the alternative income form. So I'm hopeful that we can maintain that 17% of unduplicated numbers and ensure that our LCAP funding remains at its current levels. This is a new graph that we've added, and the details are in the report. And it shows the number of staff, both certificated and classified. Management respectively is included in those counts as well. And so we did have a slight increase of staffing between adopted and first interim to reflect our actual needs and some of the adjustments that were made as part of the enacted budget. We didn't have to make as deep cuts as necessary. Just want to point out that in our budget, we have built in the normal step and column movement for staff. However, due to the flat funding, there is no additional salary for compensations for 2021 or beyond that's built into the budget. Another area of concern is that while the state has given us a little bit of reprieve in the increases in our pension rates, we are going to see a steep increase in 22-23, making that a difficult year. In addition to the increases in just the general staffing costs through a step and column, there will be another $1 million of cost associated with the PERS and STIRS pension programs. Finally, this shows again, we do meet the minimum reserves. The board did take action to increase our reserves by about $1.67 million. And that's why we're going to hold it slightly about 1% above that minimum level in the out years. However, that does factor in a $5 million of further reductions in that third year out. This is a chart of all our other funds. Two of them that in specific that I want to bring to your attention is the Cafeteria Food Service Fund. And that is, it is losing revenues this year. And we do have a transfer in of about 1.5 from the general fund. We'll adjust that as second interim based on need, but we wanted to make sure that that fund had monies in to ensure it could pay its payroll starting next year. The Fund 63 started with a healthy reserve. However, due to the pandemic, the staffing has maintained while the actual student cohorts are much smaller. And so they're not able to bring in the same level of revenue. And that is going to see about $1.1 million of loss and pretty much depleting their reserve rate. So that's one fund that we have to be very careful on. The other funds are mostly facility funds and the OPEB fund that we've talked about in terms of moving monies for our other post-employment benefits. So going forward, we need to continue our prudent financial planning, making sure that we really look at any cost savings and efficiencies, and also revenue generating opportunities. And so next up will be the governor's budget will be issued for 21-22. We're going to be looking at that closely and seeing how the Department of Finance and the governor look at the forecast. We'll also then provide the board with the audit report in January for 19-20. Second interim will be brought forth in March. And during that time, we're going to be in budget development as well. So I think that that's my quick recap. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have.
Mary Jo?
I have a question about the $5 million of reductions. Have you already reduced the budget, or do we need to somehow decide where the cuts will be made?
No, that process needs to start happening. Depending again on the governor's proposal and the legislature's approval, we'll look at what the next 2 years are going to look like in terms of, if they assume there's going to be a cost of living adjustment or not. And so we'll start to engage that process in spring and looking at potentially making some reductions in 21-22. And then again, it's always that balance. You got to make some, but you don't want to over reduce, right? And so you're always looking at that balance, and hopefully soon we'll be out of the reduction business because it's a very difficult one to be in.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, so I just have a comment. I asked this question in the over the weekend. You know, we have a significant carryover from last year, partly due to, you know, COVID and all of those things. But if we didn't roll that carryover into the following year's budget, I don't think we'd have to make those significant reductions in the third out year. You know, any amount of money that we don't spend now, we'll have to spend, you know, later on things that we, when our revenues aren't quite as good. So I'd really like to see by second interim some sort of plan to reduce our deficit spending. And I'll leave it to you to, you know, we can have conversations about what that might look like. But I just feel like we're always in this position of, you know, identifying third year reductions. And I feel like, you know, it'd be nice to see if in fact the deficit spending that we're always planning on doing is actually what's happening versus over budgeting and then having all this carryover. So anyway, so I'd like to request that we look at that a little bit more closely moving forward. With that, since there are no more questions, is there a motion to approve the first interim report? And oh, did we need to go over the budget overview for parents?
Yeah, so that again, that was part of the that was part of the report was the parents budget overview, and so we'll ask that you also approve that as part of this approval.
There we go. Is there a motion?
Can move approval of the first interim budget and the what do we call it? Parent
budget overview for parents.
I'll second it.
All right, Trustee Miller. Oh, you're nodding. I can't hear you.
Aye, sorry.
I can't hear your head rattling.
You're now, I thought you were confirming the motion.
Trustee
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee Maher?
Aye.
And I as well. So it's 5-0. All right. So we have postponed the 17.5 and 17.6 to the January 14th meeting. We're authorizing the superintendent to use his what I'm calling his superpowers that are a part of the,
if on those, his superpowers extends to items that are pandemic related. And so I would ask that the board take formal action on 17.7 and 17.8, which are the contracts before you.
Okay.
Sorry, his superpowers has limits, and I just want to be careful.
Sounds good. All right, we'll be quick. 17.7.
Great. I'll cover it, John. If I miss something, just quickly chime in. But 17.7 is the project at both Fairlands and Harvest Park, and that covers the most critical HVAC and roofing projects that were identified. We received 10 bids, and Boba Construction is the most is the apparent low bidder, and they met all the qualifications at $3.67 million. Again, this was a very good competitive bid, and the bids were all really tight. Did I miss anything, John?
It's about $1 million under budget.
That was the best part.
Great, that's great.
That was the best part. And again, just to reiterate, these are funds from Measure I-1,
yes,
not our general fund. So are there any questions about this item?
Nope.
All right, I'll seek a motion.
I'll move approval of 17.7.
I'll second it.
Well, Steve, you're another wire. Steve.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Mary Jo.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And I as well, 5-0. 17.8.
Great. Similarly, this is a package for HVAC roofing. This will, again, do the most critical projects at Amador, Pleasanton Middle School, and Valley View. And I believe on this one, we had 7 bidders, and Boba Construction, again, was the low bidder at about 4.987 million. Again, tight bids, and the staff had did a post interview, and so everything is taken care of. And I'll let John do the best part of it. And how much were we below district estimate?
A little over 1.5 million.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Good job.
There's one good thing about the shelter in place. People are hungry.
Good.
Are there
For
questions?
construction, for construction.
For construction.
Are there questions? Now I'll seek a motion to approve 17.8.
Motion to approve 17.8.
Steve, is there a second?
A second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Stephen Kelly. Trustee Makashi,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Carrion,
Aye.
Trustee Maher,
Aye.
and I as well. All right, passes 5-0. It's my understanding that we will not have a report out. We have to return to closed session, but we will not have a report out. Is that correct, Dr. Haglund?
We have that.
Are you asking for a vote?
No, I'm asking whether or not we will have any to report
settlement
out of closed.
If it's is it a settlement, Julio? Or are you just looking for direction?
It's only for direction. There is no report.
We will not
That's
have.
what I thought. All right, so thank you all very much. We're going to adjourn back to closed session. There will not be anything reported back out. Our next meeting is January 14th. Everybody, please have happy holidays. Hug your people in your household. Zoom hug all the people that you love.
Stay healthy.
And stay healthy and safe.
Wear a mask.
And wear a mask and wash your hands. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Board members, go back into the session, the link for a closed session that Dr. Haglund sent us.